Carol Burnett is a woman loved all across America for her warm smile and funny humor. For a long time, people thought she was the nicest lady in Hollywood. But after many years of being calm and graceful, she recently shocked everyone. Now in her 90s, she gave a rare interview to Rolling Stone magazine. In it, Carol Burnett talked honestly about the men she disliked the most in her life. These weren't strangers or random people. They were men who had been really important in her work and personal life. Some of them cheated on her and fought with her over money and property. Others used their power to keep her off big shows like Saturday Night Live for decades. One younger man even made fun of her character in a bad way, which made Burnett go to court. So who were these men who hurt this famous TV star so badly? And which one did she really never forgive? Harvey Corman, a big fight on set that made Burnett fire him. In the bright world of 1970s television, where every laugh meant better ratings and more money from commercials, the Carol Burnett Show was #1. At the center of it all were Carol Burnett and Harvey Corman, a team so perfect that fans believed they were meant to perform together. Burnett was the heart of the show, while Corman was the person who made everyone laugh. But behind all the clapping and laughter, trouble was quietly starting. Trouble that would destroy a friendship that had lasted 10 years. By 1974, the show had reached its 7th season. The ratings were super high. CBS had said they'd keep the show going for 3 more years, and the team had just won their 4th Emmy Award. But that same year, problems started between Burnett and Corman. The costume designer, Bob Mackie, remembered that Corman had become grumpy and quick to get angry. He even avoided Carol when they weren't filming. Some people said he felt like Burnett's shadow, worried that her fame was bigger than his own growing popularity. The big fight happened one afternoon in April at Studio 33, Television City in Los Angeles. The crew was practicing an episode with guest singer Petula Clark, who had just flown in from London. During Corman's scene, a lighting mistake left his face in darkness. He suddenly stopped in the middle of the scene, threw his script on the floor and yelled, "After all these years, can't anyone get it right?" Everyone froze. The director, Dave Powers, tried to calm him down, but Corman kept complaining, saying even Carol doesn't notice. That comment hit Burnett like a knife. She had always led her team with kindness and respect. Burnett, who was sitting quietly in the audience, stood up and walked to the stage. Without yelling, she looked at him and said clearly, "Harvey, I've had enough. If you can't respect everyone here, you don't need to be here anymore." The whole studio became completely silent. According to Bob Mackie's book, Even More Laughs, you could have heard a pin drop. Corman stared at Burnett for a moment, then walked off. Nobody followed him. That afternoon, the cameraman later remembered, Burnett sat alone on the set for over 30 minutes. She looked at Corman's empty chair and quietly told the director, "I didn't want it to end this way, but he went too far." Just hours later, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner newspaper ran the headline, "Harvey Corman leaves the Carol Burnett Show during rehearsal." CBS wouldn't comment, but rumors spread really fast. Some reporters at Variety magazine said that Burnett lost her patience after months of problems with Corman. Over the next 3 days, Hollywood couldn't stop talking about it. Burnett's close friend Vicki Lawrence tried calling Corman, but he stayed quiet. Burnett kept filming like normal, never saying his name. A crew member said she seemed calm but very tired. Then on Wednesday morning, CBS got a phone call. It was Harvey Corman. He simply told the assistant, "I need to talk to Carol." When Burnett picked up the phone, his voice was shaking. "I was wrong. I want to come back." The next day, he showed up at the team's morning meeting. Everyone watched silently as he said sorry to the crew, then turned to Burnett. "I forgot why I started." Burnett smiled, walked forward, and hugged him. The studio burst into clapping, but the people who were there knew something had changed forever. Corman stayed on the show until 1977, then quietly left. Burnett stayed in touch, though their friendship was never the same. In a 1983 Entertainment Tonight interview, when someone asked about Corman, she said softly, "Harvey made me laugh more than anyone else and gave me the biggest headaches." The incident, which people later called the Studio 33 blow-up, became one of CBS's most famous behind-the-scenes stories. a reminder of how easily creative partnerships can break when egos clash. After that, Burnett grew stronger and more professional, but also more careful. She stopped letting her emotions get in the way of work. But the trouble in her life didn't end there. Joe Hamilton, her ex-husband's betrayal, and the fight over what they built together. Behind the dazzling lights of the Carol Burnett show, which made television history, was a marriage quietly falling apart between Carol Burnett and Joe Hamilton. Once called CBS's golden couple, their partnership created joy for millions of people. But that same world of laughter slowly turned into one of silence and pain. Their story started in 1960 when Burnett was a young performer on The Gary Moore Show. Joe Hamilton, who was already an experienced producer, had worked on The Steve Allen Show and The Colgate Comedy Hour. He was 10 years older than her, calm, sophisticated, and experienced. They met during a CBS taping in New York. Burnett later remembered, "He looked at me in a way that made me feel I truly mattered." 3 years later, they got married in a small California ceremony with only close friends and co-workers attending. By 1967, when the Carol Burnett Show started, Hamilton had taken charge behind the scenes as producer, mentor, and partner. For years, they were the perfect creative team. She brought the warmth, he provided the structure. But huge success can hurt even the strongest relationship. Costume designer Bob Mackie remembered that by 1975, Hamilton had started taking more control. He wanted to approve the guest list and what was in the scripts before Burnett even saw them. In one meeting, he suggested cutting down emotional scenes and only focusing on the funny parts. Burnett disagreed, saying, "Viewers need both heart and laughter." It was the beginning of growing distance between them, both in work and in their marriage. As work pressure got bigger, Hamilton started being gone from home more. At first, Burnett thought it was because of new projects. Then people started whispering. In August 1979, TV Guide magazine hinted at a veteran producer tangled up in a private relationship in a Los Angeles editing room. They didn't say names, but people who knew the industry understood. Crew members said Hamilton was often seen with a young CBS editor at a restaurant called the Smokehouse near the studio. Burnett didn't confront him right away, but her close friend Vicki Lawrence later said, Burnett broke down crying after hearing two co-workers talk about Joe's too friendly relationship. The breaking point came in 1982. While looking over contracts, Burnett's lawyer found out that Hamilton had started a company called Hamilton Productions in Beverly Hills. He had registered spin-off projects from the Carol Burnett Show only under his name. One was Mama's Family, which was based on a Burnett sketch, but without her being credited as an owner. That was the last straw. Burnett confronted her husband directly at their CBS office. According to the biography Laughing Till It Hurts, she asked, "Do you think it's fair to turn what we built together into something that's just yours?" Hamilton replied coldly, "It's business, Carol, not emotion." That ended everything. On March 3, 1983, Burnett filed for divorce in Los Angeles County Court. The Los Angeles Times ran a short headline, "Carol Burnett and Joe Hamilton split." But behind that simple headline was one of Hollywood's most complicated fights over money and property. Hamilton demanded full production rights, including profits from the Carol Burnett Show and related projects. Burnett fought to keep the name and half the money. The trial lasted nearly a year. Reporters from People, Variety, and USA Today newspapers waited outside every day. Burnett stayed composed the whole time. Hamilton looked really worn out. They rarely looked at each other. In June 1984, the court decided Burnett got to keep the rights to the show's name, while Hamilton got 40% of the money from reruns. When asked how she felt, Burnett smiled a little. "We were the best team until he forgot I was more than a partner." The quote was on the cover of People magazine and was talked about on talk shows all over the country. After the divorce, Burnett cut all ties with Hamilton's productions. His later shows never did as well as his earlier work. He died from heart disease in 1991. Burnett didn't go to the funeral, but she sent white flowers with a note that said, "I wish you peace, Joe. As for me, I'll keep going." Short, but filled with everything she couldn't say. Years later, during an interview at the Paley Center for Media, She thought about it quietly. Joe taught me that in this business, love isn't enough. You also need trust. Marlon Brando. A late-night call that left Burnett outraged. The third man on Burnett's list was Marlon Brando. Some stories in Hollywood sound like gossip until you realize they're actually true. One of the strangest was between Carol Burnett, CBS's Queen of Comedy, and Marlon Brando, the world-famous actor who had just amazed audiences with The Godfather in 1972. It was a quiet summer night in July 1972. Los Angeles was asleep, its hills lit only by dim lights along Coldwater Canyon, where Burnett lived with her two daughters. At 3 a.m., the phone rang. The housekeeper, thinking it was an emergency from the studio, woke her up. Burnett answered sleepily, then instantly woke up when she heard a deep male voice say, "Carol, it's Marlon Brando." She thought it was a prank, until he mentioned he'd just watched a rerun of the Carol Burnett show on CBS. Realizing it really was Brando, she thanked him politely, expecting the call to end. But it didn't. The call lasted over 30 minutes. Brando talked about acting, Hollywood, and how television needs more women like you. His voice got slower and softer, and his comments started to cross the line. Burnett later remembered, "I realized I was speaking to the real Marlon Brando, not one of his characters. He was charming and brilliant, but also dangerous." When he kept making more and more personal comments, Burnett cut in firmly but gently. "Mr. Brando, I appreciate your kind words, but it's very late. I have an early call tomorrow." She hung up, thinking that was the end. By morning, Hollywood was buzzing. The Hollywood Reporter ran the headline, "Marlon Brando calls Carol Burnett at 3 a.m." Within hours, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner followed with, "Brando finds inspiration in CBS's Comedy Queen." Gossip columnists Luella Parsons and Rona Barrett added that the call lasted over an hour, and Brando sounded smitten. CBS put out a statement saying the call was completely personal. Furious, Burnett asked the PR team to stop the rumors, but the story kept spreading. An anonymous source even claimed Brando called again a few days later, but Burnett didn't answer. According to her friend Vicki Lawrence, Burnett felt humiliated and angry. She was scared the public would get the wrong idea about the story. Over lunch at Musso and Frank Grill restaurant, she told her friend, "He crossed the line. I can't believe someone like Marlon Brando thinks a late-night call is acceptable." After that, Burnett avoided him completely. At every event, she made sure not to be in the same picture. At the 1974 AFI Awards, when Brando unexpectedly walked the red carpet, she immediately turned away. Reporters thought it was a coincidence. Insiders knew better. From then on, her monthly PR schedules included a note, "Do not attend events with Brando present." This was never made public, but a former CBS worker confirmed in Hollywood Inside Out that Burnett always avoided any place where Brando might show up. Brando never commented, though. People who knew him said he once joked, "Carol takes things too seriously. It was just a conversation." Instead of making things better, that comment only made things worse, making him seem more arrogant. For Burnett, it wasn't just a personal insult. It was a lesson about boundaries and trust in show business. After that night, she became more private and more careful. One former crew member said Burnett never answered phone calls after midnight again, even from CBS. But the next blow would be even more painful. Not a private insult this time, but a public humiliation in front of hundreds of Hollywood guests. Cary Grant publicly dismissed Burnett's everyday humor style. Hollywood in 1968 was a world of sparkling lights, fancy parties, and huge egos. At that time, The Carol Burnett Show had just become a huge hit, sweeping the Emmy Awards and making Carol Burnett one of the biggest names on American television. That same year, Cary Grant, the symbol of elegance from Hollywood's golden age, received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. 2 stars, 2 generations, 2 different worlds. They should have met only to exchange polite congratulations. But that night at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, a single careless comment created a split between 2 icons that would never fully heal. The fancy event took place in the hotel's International Ballroom, filled with stars like Lucille Ball, Gregory Peck, Elizabeth Taylor, and Jack Lemmon. Carol Burnett arrived in a deep red gown designed especially for her by Bob Mackie, radiant and confident. After the ceremony, she walked over to Cary Grant's table with a glass of champagne in her hand, ready to congratulate him on his award. Film critic Roger Ebert, who was at the event, later remembered that as Burnett came to the table, the air suddenly grew tense. A director sitting next to Grant tried to lighten the mood, saying, "Have you seen Carol's show? The whole country loves it." Grant smirked a little. His tone was smooth but had mockery in it. "Oh, that show. The one where she waves her arms, makes faces, overdoes everything. I can't understand why people like that sort of thing." The words fell into the ballroom like a stone hitting still water. Some people laughed awkwardly, others became silent. Burnett kept her smile, but her eyes changed. Without raising her voice, she simply replied, "Maybe people prefer laughing with real folks rather than with perfection." The table went quiet. Burnett tilted her head politely and walked away, leaving Grant with a stiff smile. But Hollywood never forgets moments like that. Just 2 days later, the Los Angeles Times ran a small piece in its entertainment section titled "Cary Grant and Carol Burnett, a frosty encounter at the Beverly Hilton." While the article was mild, it hinted that Grant had looked down on Burnett's popular comedy style. The story spread quickly across town. Some people in the industry defended Grant, saying he was just joking. But television audiences, especially women, were furious. At CBS, which made the Carol Burnett show, the communications department responded quickly. They put out a short statement. "Carol Burnett represents humor that is humane and intelligent, laughter born from empathy, not foolishness." The message was polite, but everyone understood it was aimed at Grant. While Burnett stayed quiet, Grant accidentally made things worse. In an interview with Variety journalist Art Silverman, when asked about American TV comedy, he said, "I prefer a more refined kind of humor, something like the European style. Television these days is too loaded. Everyone is trying too hard to be funny." He didn't say names, but nobody doubted who he meant. The tabloids took it even further, claiming Grant had told Burnett directly that she made comedy lose its elegance. Though this couldn't be proven, the rumor spread quickly, making Burnett's fans even angrier. CBS said that viewer letters doubled in November 1968, most saying they supported her. Burnett's calm reaction impressed everyone. She didn't fight back, didn't give interviews. She simply kept working. That season, the Carol Burnett show got its highest ratings ever. She even invited her close friend and fellow comedy legend Lucille Ball to co-star in a special episode. Lucille later said, "Carol told me the best answer is when they turn on the TV and still see us there." Still, Burnett never forgot that night. When Paramount Pictures later invited her to co-star with Cary Grant in a 1970 musical film, she politely said no, saying she had scheduling conflicts. A friend on the project revealed she privately said, "I won't work with someone who looks down on women's laughter." As for Grant, he never apologized publicly and never mentioned the incident again. But in Graham McCann's biography, Cary Grant, A Class Apart, it's written that Grant once admitted, "Carol is such a smart, strong woman, she made me feel uneasy." Ironically, Grant's disrespect became fuel for Burnett's determination. She kept bringing ordinary characters to life on television. Housewives, maids, seamstresses, people with simple lives and big hearts. Within 3 years, she won 3 Emmy Awards in a row, and The Carol Burnett Show was named one of TV Guide's classic American television programs. From that experience, Burnett learned one thing: no need to argue, let success do the talking. But as she became more successful, it seemed her very strength only made certain powerful men in the industry more uncomfortable. Lorne Michaels, accused by Burnett of dismissing women and excluding her from Saturday Night Live. In American television circles, there is a mystery that lasted almost 50 years. Carol Burnett, the woman who paved the way for female-led comedy shows, was never invited to host Saturday Night Live. Given how important she was, it was so unbelievable that many people in the industry called it a deliberate silence. To understand why, we need to go back to 1975, the year Saturday Night Live first aired from Studio 8H at Rockefeller Plaza in New York. At that time, The Carol Burnett Show on CBS was in its 8th season and was the #1 show in the country. Burnett represented heartfelt, human comedy, while Lorne Michaels, SNL's creator, was shaping a completely different kind of humor: sharp, satirical, and politically charged. In the show's early days, several critics, including Harriet Van Horn of the New York Post, wrote that Burnett should appear on SNL to bridge 2 generations of comedy. The comment seemed harmless, but it marked the beginning of a long silence that would last almost half a century. Inside NBC, Burnett's name reportedly came up in discussions for Season 2 around 1976, but Michaels dismissed it, saying she doesn't fit the spirit of the show. According to Live from New York, Back Bay Books, 2002, one of SNL's editors revealed that Michaels had once said during a meeting, "She's the face of old television. We're doing something new." The rumor spread after journalist Tom Shales published a Washington Post article in 1981 claiming Burnett had expressed interest in guest hosting multiple times but never got a reply from NBC. The story caused an uproar. Hundreds of viewers wrote to the network asking why America's top female comedian was being ignored. A week later, NBC put out a statement saying, "Guest invitations depend on each season's content and tone," but few people believed it. In truth, Burnett never publicly asked to host. Still, many insiders said she felt undervalued. During a late 1980s appearance on Larry King Live, when asked about it, Burnett smiled and joked, her tone both playful and bittersweet. "Maybe I'm just not edgy enough for them." People who worked with Michaels described him as having a firm vision of what SNL represented: young, rebellious, ironic, the opposite of Burnett's warm, heartfelt humor. A former editor told Rolling Stone in 1990 that Michaels had once flatly refused a major sponsor's suggestion to feature Burnett in the 10th anniversary special, saying, "We respect her, but that's not our kind of comedy." That statement became the unofficial confirmation of a long-standing attitude. As time went on, relations stayed frosty. In 1999, at the Television Academy Honors in Los Angeles, Burnett and Michaels were both scheduled to speak. Journalist Bill Carter of the New York Times, who attended, later described how when Burnett took the stage, the room gave her a standing ovation. Minutes later, when Michaels was introduced, she stayed seated, smiling faintly, eyes fixed on the camera. The clip aired later on Entertainment Tonight and was called "The Coldest Look in Hollywood." The story might have faded into history until 2023, when NBC produced Carol Burnett, 90 Years of Laughter plus Love, to honor her legacy. During an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, a journalist asked if she regretted never hosting SNL. Burnett smiled kindly, then replied with a line that shook the media world. "I guess they didn't need me, but I didn't need them either." Just one sentence, and nearly 50 years of silence were finally broken. Within 24 hours, the hashtag #InviteCarol2SNL went viral, with thousands of fans urging NBC to right a historic wrong. Later, at a panel discussion at the Paley Center for Media, Burnett reflected, "Some people don't realize that kindness has its own kind of power." After that, Burnett chose to appear less often on modern shows, preserving her classic image instead. But fate would soon bring her to work again with another man in the industry, someone she had long admired, and that partnership would become one of the most memorable heartbreaks of her career. Dick Van Dyke criticized Burnett's show as soft and too feminine. As 1977 began, the Carol Burnett Show entered a risky transition. Harvey Corman, Burnett's trusted co-star and the soul of many sketches, had suddenly left after 10 successful seasons. CBS urgently needed a big name to fill the empty spot, and there was only one star grand enough to reassure them: Dick Van Dyke, the beloved actor from Mary Poppins and The Dick Van Dyke Show. Hollywood was thrilled. On August 15th, the Los Angeles Times ran a glowing headline, "A Dream Duo." Two legends of American television join forces. CBS launched a huge campaign, plastering posters across Los Angeles, showing Burnett and Van Dyke laughing side by side. But within weeks, that excitement faded, replaced by behind-the-scenes tension the audience would never see. From the very first rehearsal at CBS Television City in Hollywood, their differences were clear. Van Dyke, trained in Broadway-style performance, liked slower pacing and heavy emphasis on dialogue. Burnett, raised in the fast, spontaneous rhythm of live television, wanted quick timing and natural reactions. Writer Bob Ellison remembered in his memoir, Television Tales, "From day one, Dick asked to change lines because they didn't fit his rhythm. Carol just smiled, but the tension was obvious." 2 weeks later, during the first live audience rehearsal, Van Dyke suddenly stopped mid-scene, script in hand, and told the director, "I think this part feels too light. All these soft lines. Too feminine. No punch." The room went silent. Burnett, standing just a few steps away, looked at him, then quietly walked backstage. Ellison remembered, "No one dared say a word. Everyone could tell Carol was genuinely hurt. Not angry, just sad." Rumors of the clash quickly leaked. A TV Guide article titled "Tension Behind Burnett's Show" quoted an unnamed source calling it a dream collaboration turned into a clash of two comedy generations. CBS tried to suppress the story, but within the industry, everyone knew the two barely spoke off stage. By mid-October 1977, the conflict peaked. During a rehearsal featuring Burnett's close friend Lucille Ball as guest star, Van Dyke stopped again, sighed, and said, "I just can't get laughs with this kind of light humor." Lucille later recalled in a People magazine interview that Burnett looked at her, smiled tightly, and whispered, "I think I picked the wrong guy." The following week, Van Dyke missed a taping without notice. CBS had to re-edit the script, and Burnett reshot the key scenes with her old crew. The network put out a brief statement. Dick Van Dyke departs the program due to scheduling conflicts. But costume designer Bob Mackie revealed the truth. Van Dyke had privately told the writers, "I can't work in a place where feelings run the show." At a year-end press conference in New York, Van Dyke told a Chicago Tribune reporter, "I admire Carol, but our styles are different. I prefer structured comedy. Her show is too gentle." The comment seemed casual, but when Variety reprinted it, readers took it as a direct insult. Burnett's fans were furious, flooding CBS with letters of support. Burnett stayed composed. In an interview with the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, she simply smiled and said, "I've always believed laughter has no gender. It's either genuine or it's not." Calm, brief, but it said everything. Van Dyke lasted only 6 episodes before leaving. That season of The Carol Burnett Show ended more quietly than ever. When CBS held the Carol Burnett 10th Anniversary Special in 1980, Van Dyke's name was missing from the guest list. A silent reminder that some chapters stay unresolved. But that wasn't the final storm. 20 years later, in a new era and a very different style of comedy, a daring and controversial creator, Seth MacFarlane, the mind behind Family Guy, would force Carol Burnett back into the spotlight, this time to defend her dignity in court. Seth MacFarlane used Burnett's iconic image in a disrespectful parody. By 2007, Hollywood had entered a time when the line between satire and insult was becoming increasingly blurred. Shows like South Park and Family Guy dominated American television with their unapologetic humor. Within that world, Seth MacFarlane, the creator of Family Guy, was called a boundary-breaking genius. But his boldest move would end up crossing a line by targeting one of America's most beloved icons, Carol Burnett. The controversy started quietly. On April 23, 2006, Fox aired an episode titled Peterotica. Midway through, a brief silent scene appeared, only a few seconds long, with no dialogue or music. But it shocked millions. On screen, a side character dressed in a blue uniform, wearing a headscarf and holding a mop, appeared almost identical to the charwoman, the beloved character Burnett had played more than 200 times on The Carol Burnett Show. But this time, The charwoman wasn't the symbol of kindness and hard work that viewers remembered. She was placed in a suggestive, mocking setting. That night, Fox's offices were flooded with complaint calls. The next morning, Variety and The Hollywood Reporter both covered the story, calling the scene a misguided attempt at satire. Older audiences, especially those who grew up with Burnett, called it a stain on television's memory. At her home in Santa Monica, then 73 years old, Burnett learned about the scene from her former manager, Joe Hamilton Jr., according to assistant Jill Saperstein in People magazine. Burnett listened silently, then said softly, "Charwoman isn't a joke. She's part of people's hearts." No one expected what came next. Less than a year later, on April 16, 2007, Burnett filed a lawsuit against 20th Century Fox Television and Seth MacFarlane in federal court in Los Angeles. The 20-page complaint, signed by attorney Richard Book, who had previously represented Johnny Cash, accused Fox of unauthorized use of a copyrighted image and damage to artistic reputation. The requested damages, $2 million, a small amount by Hollywood standards, but deeply symbolic. The press quickly called it a battle between two eras of American comedy. CNN reported it in its evening news, while the Los Angeles Times ran a column asking, "Can free satire override cultural memory?" Critics like Ken Tucker from Entertainment Weekly sided with Burnett. "This isn't just about Carol. It's about the line between art and disrespect." Younger audiences, especially Family Guy fans, defended MacFarlane, arguing that comedy should have no boundaries. The first hearing took place on June 14, 2007, at the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California, with Judge Dean D. Pregerson presiding. Burnett didn't attend in person, but sent a video statement filmed at home. Speaking calmly, her voice raspy but steady, she said, "I'm not suing for money. I just want people to remember that some characters belong to the hearts of the audience, not to anyone else." Fox's legal team pushed back hard. MacFarlane's representatives argued that the scene was clearly parody, protected under the First Amendment. MacFarlane himself appeared in court, composed and confident. In a later New York Times interview, he said, "I grew up watching her show. I thought she'd understand that every icon can inspire the next generation." What sounded like a compliment only caused more backlash. USA Today ran an editorial titled, "Even Humor Needs Limits," writing that MacFarlane confused admiration with appropriation. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Times concluded poignantly, "Some memories, even archived, deserve gratitude, not mockery." On July 3, 2007, Judge Pregerson dismissed the case, ruling that it fell under fair use for parody. The lawsuit was over, but the debate was not. Burnett didn't appeal. She simply told NBC in an interview, "I've said what I needed to say, in the way I believe was right." Public sentiment, however, overwhelmingly sided with her. In an Entertainment Weekly year-end poll, 68% of people agreed that Burnett did the right thing. A veteran Variety critic wrote, "She didn't win in court, but she won in the hearts of viewers." MacFarlane, for his part, stayed unapologetic. During Family Guy's 20th anniversary celebration in 2019, when asked if he regretted the scene, he said simply, "I've never regretted a single episode." The comment brought back old discussions among Burnett's fans. But what Hollywood would remember most came 4 years later at CBS's 70th anniversary gala, held at the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles in 2011. Burnett and MacFarlane happened to be seated in the same guest row. When the camera panned across the audience, Burnett sat upright, her smile gentle and composed. Behind her, MacFarlane gave a polite nod. She didn't respond, just clapped softly in rhythm with the music. If you found Carol Burnett's untold stories behind her legendary smile surprising, share your thoughts below. Who do you think hurt her the most? And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. There are many more Hollywood behind-the-scenes stories to come, where fame always walks hand in hand with secrets never told. See you in the next episode.